Good morning, everybody. It is 10:30. We are live. Welcome to the Sheep Plant Association's second online conference. My conference welcome will follow in a couple of minutes after a short supplier member spotlight from BRCGS Machines and Engineering.
The basic die cutting method is designed to increase finished quality and production while reducing manual labor to a one-operator, hands-free process. Nick-free shear-cut pieces are pneumatically stripped of waste, accurately counted, and neatly stacked into clean and orderly finished units, free of angel hair and paper dust, and ready for shipping prep upon machine exit. With no special tooling required, the large basic die format has quick and simple setups and job changeovers, normally within 10 to 15 minutes. The basic die cutter handles a wide array of substrates, making it the most versatile die cutter on the market. Simple to complex items that inefficiently or fail to run on traditional die cutters are easily accomplished at the touch of a single operator computerized control screen. Ask BRCGS to solve your greatest die cutting challenges. We most always say yes. Make simple easier and make difficult simple with basic machines. 25 years, proven, predictable, profitable.
Great. Well, thank you for that from BRCGS. Welcome, everybody, to our second online conference. A little bit different to a physical conference. We can't shake hands, we can't get close, we can't buy each other beer, unfortunately. But please be patient on today's conference. It's quite a technical and logistical undertaking, as I'm sure you can imagine. We'll be shoehorning as much regular conference content into an hour and a half or an hour and 45 minutes of this Zoom conference. As you'll unlikely be aware, we've been very, very busy over the last 10 months. We're still running our fortnightly converter member Zoom calls, where we keep in regular contact with our peers in the trade. We are continuing with our regular business and COVID bulletins from BAYS and from government. They come out almost on a daily basis, sometimes more than once a day. We've improved our reach and increased our online presence through social media and better use of our website. We've changed fundamentally the way we communicate with you guys because we're doing it on a much more regular basis. We have to. There is so much time critical information that we need to get to members. We've also done the staples. We've reissued the Sheep Plant Association contracts of employment and all the policies that sit behind that. We've also launched a major initiative around BRCGS and getting to grips with issue 6, and we're helping a lot of members in that area. More about that later. Well, my 2 minutes is nearly up, not the normal spiel, I know. Just one quick reminder, please refrain from asking any questions or commenting on anything that might be deemed sensitive under current competition law. Thank you. Please feel free to scan the QR codes that will pop up on your screen from time to time. They will take you to the equivalent or the proper website that will link to that QR code. There'll also be some online polls throughout the event, so please take a couple of seconds to answer them. Your feedback is very valuable. I also urge you to stay connected, how tempting it might be to leave halfway through. Please stay connected towards the end of conference because we have 3 very valuable offers which will bring great value to your business. So please stay towards the end of conference so you can see those. First formal presentation today is from a conference regular. Luke Menzies from Menzies Law will be giving us his employment law update.
Thank you, Tim. Great to see you all. Let me just be terribly efficient and share my screen, if I may. Welcome. It's a funny old time, isn't it? Oh, hold on. Hopefully you can see my slides now. In some ways, there's lots going on in employment law, and in some ways, not so much. The tribunals are often closed, but there's loads going on in terms of trends and so on. Just, of course, a reminder, you'll forgive me. I know Tim will be happy if I remind you of the SPA hotline number, the employment law hotline, and the email address as well. I'm able to service many of you at membership with your 15-minute free calls, and I look forward to doing so again. It's been a great way to stay in touch with you, so keep them coming. Recently, we've had a whole range of things that we've helped SPA members with, including the usual redundancies, disciplinaries, grievances, that sort of things. Changes to contracts here and there. There's always a few tweaks. A couple of interesting questions about holiday pay and furlough, and also a couple of I'll mention later actually, but working from home while abroad, and I'll touch on that in a minute. There's so much about furlough and so on. I won't begin to go in there, and you're probably already pretty well versed in that. But I will just remind you one thing that occasionally is not noticed or is not quite understood, and we get calls about, is a statutory sick pay for self-isolation. That's currently 11 days you can pay SSP for someone who isn't actually sick enough to not be at work, but tests positive for COVID, or is symptomatic, or is in the same household as someone. So that's the latest. It's currently 11 days rather than 14 or rather than nil. This is an interesting one. We've had 3 of these recently, where people have decided to go abroad when they've been allowed to, without asking the boss, well, without letting their employer know. And they've all said they thought it was okay because they are still working from home. Home just happens to be in Spain or in Turkey or in Ireland. That may or may not be okay, depending on the employer, but it's worth bearing in mind. Of course, from the employer's point of view, if they're not expecting this person to come in for a while, that may be fine. But what if they need them in tomorrow or next week? And that has given rise to a few problems. And actually, and you expect your lawyer to be down with the dirty detail, there's actually quite a few employment law and tax risks that could come up for an employer if you have staff working abroad. There's tax issues, there's pensions, social security, immigration, data protection, and other regulatory and legal issues that could arise. Even the opportunity for another company to decide that what's happening is that you're attempting to establish a permanent base in that country, and then even more laws apply to you. So it may be rare, but do bear in mind, and at least one SPA member, if not 2, that I've talked to in the last month have had this problem. So do you know where your employees are? There's new immigration laws that came in on the 1st. Now, for the majority of you, there won't be a problem. But if you do have anyone coming into work from abroad, even from the EU, from the 1st of January, just bear in mind that there are new rules now. The obvious stuff, really, that being an EU citizen no longer gives you right to work in the country, and you'll need a visa, and the employer, that's you, will also need a sponsorship license. Doesn't affect people that were here already on that date, but will new ones. Still no changes really for as a result of Brexit and employment law. I've been saying for a long while we expect Parliament to make a few changes when it wants to, but otherwise all employment law is British, even if it came from Europe in the first place. I think Parliament's rather too busy. There's that immigration law change I mentioned. Data protection, a lot of questions about that recently. What happens now we're outside the EU? Does the GDPR still apply? Yes, it does. The GDPR was made domestic in the Data Protection Act 2018. And so like all employment law, it has become Britishfied and remains ours. There could be a change in the future, but for now, I would stick with the same wording that you've got in various documents and agreements and carry on the same way until further notice. And I'm sure we'll all get that. So hopefully I've stuck within my 5 minutes. We'll get a thumbs up from Tim. I got a smile. That's good. Ah, both. Well, what more can you want? Remember to use the hotline. Remember, we're here for you. 15 minutes free advice on any topic per day. It's great to see so many of you in the conference. Great to speak to you and be in touch with you all. And I shall say thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, Luke. That was great. As good as normal, I would say. Full of cheer and great humour. So thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Tim.
Next up, we have a short supplier spotlight from Leonard Little and Associates. That's Macabox and Fuzzaluza. Thank you. Thank you for that. We have another very short supplier spotlight from Avanti Conveyors.
At Avanti Conveyors, innovation is one of our 3 core values, along with support and flexibility. We are continuously looking for ways to innovate and push the boundaries of design and engineering to achieve energy-efficient and cost-effective solutions whilst maintaining the ultimate goal of maximising customer production. The latest innovation drive that Avanti is implementing is Air-Free by 23. It is our goal that by 2023, all equipment scoped within the supplied solutions will not require any compressed air supply from the customer, but instead will be all electric. This has major benefits: lower energy consumption, reduction in running costs. It is up to 7 times cheaper running purely electric compared to compressed air. Function and control are increased. With localized electrical methods, we can utilize mechanical design to provide consistent handling control. Elimination of air pipe work runs with the inevitable leakages, and noise reduction. We have already removed air from 80% of our product range, including the all-electric separators and the Pegasus palletizer. With 80% of the product range already been tried, tested and implemented. The remaining products are on target to be air-free by 2023. Combining all our key values, innovation, support and flexibility, allows us at Avanti to supply our customers with the most efficient and sustainable materials handling systems, delivering significant improvements in plant productivity and profitability, whilst being great for the planet. We look forward to discussing this more with you in the near future, and if you would like to find out more about this and how Avanti are innovating for our customers, please visit our website, scan the QR code, or speak to us.
That's great. Thank you very much. We mentioned earlier that there will be some polls during this event today. We do have our first anonymous poll here, so we won't know who has voted, but it's a good sanity check for us. Our first poll today, and hopefully it will be coming up on your screen shortly, is how do you feel the Sheet Plant Association is representing or helping you at this time? Now, again, this poll is anonymous, so please be honest, and your potential answers are excellently, well, or could do better, a bit like my school report. So if you wouldn't mind taking a second to fill out that poll, that would be fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay, next up, we have, if you're a regular attendee to conference, we normally have a market update. That's what's going on in our peculiar industry. Now, things are particularly peculiar at the moment. So Neil Osmond is going to present, as he does normally, a brief presentation on the current state of the industry, followed by a very interesting panel discussion all about paper supply. It won't have passed you by that we have some challenges within the paper supply market at the moment. So yeah, Neil Osmond from Noah Prism will be doing a panel discussion following his presentation on the paper market, paper supply and paper dynamics. Over to you, Neil.
Thank you very much, Tim. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this session. As Tim indicated, we have two sections to this, a short presentation with slides that will be available for people to have after the event, and obviously the narrative with the recording. But if I can introduce Frauke Schmidt from Audit, Paul Nielsen from Paper Trading UK, and if I can introduce Phil Bond from Numera Analytics. They are our three panel session attendees, and both Frauke and Paul will be presenting some details within this presentation. So without any further ado, I'll just forward the slides and introduce Frauke to come and speak first with ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Neil, for the introduction. I've prepared a little slide. Thanks for forwarding, Neil. On the development of the testliner pricing in the UK and Germany, the UK one is the orange one and it's in pounds, that it's why below the pink one, German. And I've also added 2019, so you can see that the market price had been on a downward trajectory for some time. And it was really COVID and the lockdowns that changed everything from one day to the other. Paper production, especially on the continent, was restricted. Some recovered paper volumes fell off the cliff. So there you can see a spike in price on the continent. Then in the summer, it was different again. We were coming out of the lockdowns and we're facing a global recession, and there was much pessimism in the market. So the prices on the continent went down again. And there were some reactions from paper mills, of course. They had to postpone their maintenance shuts from the spring to the autumn, and they were prolonged in some cases. New paper capacity came on stream a bit later on. And of course, there were chances to deliver material into China. So then in the fourth quarter again, when the market demand developed in a very, very good way, much better than many people had expected, there was a sudden tightness in the market, and you can see prices increasing on the continent from October. I've put a question mark for January in the UK, but I can tell you there are price increases to be seen on the market right now. Thank you, Neil. So on the next slide, it's on the fiber costs. That's in the UK, and I've also added 2019 because you can see that the market had been in a deep crisis at the beginning of last year. There was even negative territory for mixed paper, and suddenly everybody was crying for paper, and the UK could deliver. So you see a spike that came quickly and went quickly. But however, prices never went down to the low levels that we saw before the lockdowns. And at the moment, you can see the same kind of development as you saw on the paper side, good demand and pandemic-related restrictions. Thanks, Neil. So what do we expect for next year? There are two biggest question marks, of course, are COVID and Brexit. Please excuse the Brexit slide picture. I just like Banksy very much. And those, of course, have an impact on how recovered paper generation develops and how the supply chains are going, because the recovered paper exporters to the EU are seeing massive problems at the moment. There's the impact on online shopping. The longer the pandemic, the better for the online shopping. There's the general economic picture. How quickly will we keep the virus at bay? How quickly will the economy come back? Will Brexit help, or will it be to the detriment? And of course, there are the new capacities. Thank you, Neil. So you can see just a brief look, there's lots of new capacities coming on stream. And of course, we will also see whether COVID has another effect on this. That's already my presentation. Thank you very much. I hand the baton over again.
Thank you, Frauke. That's excellent. Frauke is new, and this is the first time of joining us from Ovid, and much like the other panelists, will be available to be able to give more details and with a poll at the end. So what I also wanted to do is to introduce a familiar face, so Paul Nielsen from Paper Trading UK, who's going to add a little more to what Frauke was saying. Over to you, Paul. Do we have?
Sorry about that. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
We're starting off here with a quick look at the short-term capacity evolution. So these are the new capacity coming on stream in the near term, and you can see it's about 3.8 million tons. It sounds like a lot. It probably isn't in the big scheme of things, and only a couple of these mills are anywhere near the UK. Paper mills are 24/7 operations. They're very maintenance dependent. A typical modern paper mill will have a spare store worth in excess of 20 million pounds. So that gives you an idea of how maintenance dependent they are and how keen they are never to stop running for longer than necessary. After the first lockdown, which was the first lockdown for all of us, we had no experience. Many mills had to delay or cancel their planned maintenance shuts. This is a big deal. Maintenance shuts are planned well in advance, and for a week's shut in a typical paper mill, you will have 150 external employees on site. So it's planned well ahead. It's a major logistical exercise. It all had to be cancelled because of this new territory we found ourselves in. So these delayed shuts caused subsequent breakdowns, and they certainly caused a replanning, rescheduling of the maintenance shuts where possible later last year. And we all know that the second half of the year is the busy half. And of course, it contributed towards the so-called shortage. I prefer to call it an imbalance in demand and supply. There was a serious negative outlook in early 2020, and many mills also decided to take on many thousands of tons of export orders, some of which have not been supplied yet, because at the end of the day, the negativity didn't really come out as negative as everybody thought it would be. The end of 2020 wasn't bad at all. Some of these orders haven't been delivered yet. Some have been cancelled, or the mills are attempting to cancel them. Yeah, can we jump to the next slide, please, Neil?
Oops. Oh, well. Come on. There we go.
There we go. Thank you. I believe that the imbalance is delayed consumption, at least in some cases, and of course we have the reduced production from the mills in the second half of 2020. That resulted in pressure on price, and the decreases we had seen on the continent were, how can I say, they were taken back in the sense that paper prices went back up to the same amount they had come down, and then we had a little additional increase that took it beyond the original decrease. Paper was in very short supply in some places, and I know some corrugators had to stop. Not for very long, but nevertheless they had to stop. And lead time for boxes as well as sheet has gone out significantly, presenting major problems for the entire supply chain. Paper prices in the UK were very stable through 2020. One of the benefits of a highly integrated market, I think. We are now seeing some paper price increases coming through. We had the first increase from the 1st of January in the UK, and we have already been advised of the second increase. And that tells us a bit about the pressure we are now under. It's really hard to say what the future holds, but I believe with quite some certainty that the first 6 months of this year will be tight. We're going to have more of the same, not as bad as November, December last year, but paper will be tight, and things are not made any easier by Brexit if you are delivering to the UK by truck. The delayed startups of the additional or new capacity is not coming to the rescue as planned. So things will remain tight, in my opinion. Could it go on for the rest of this year? It's entirely possible. But I do think that the first 6 months will be significantly more difficult than the last 6 months of this year. Frauke mentioned online sales. I believe online sales has taken a huge share of the paper availability, and I believe it will continue. A lot of the habits we now have as a result of COVID, including this online conference, are no doubt here to stay, and we are all now used to online shopping. I believe it's the place to be, and it will be taking a lot of paper going forward. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you, Paul. That's great. And I have one familiar slide, and I won't dwell too long because this will be available for people, but really to support and back up what Frauke and Paul have said, it's been a seesaw year for demand for corrugated. Everybody will know that who are converting corrugated, and from the sessions that we have every 2 weeks that Tim and I host just to listen to people, it was evident that in November time that demand was rising significantly, and by the beginning of December was unprecedented. As both Frauke and Paul have indicated, e-commerce. So just to give you a bit of an idea, e-commerce, we collect statistics, and e-commerce is approximately 7.5% of UK consumption of corrugated by volume. And that has been growing by 9.4% in the last year. So significant that e-commerce demand is high. And then the indications very well articulated by Frauke and Paul, that the demands on paper and the demands on waste paper have been significant as well. So I'm not going to dwell any more on these details, but all of us are available if you wish to speak further about any of these details. What I'd like to do is I've got 3 questions which we need to ask. Excuse this slide. The 3 questions that I've got, and I will ask Phil to join us first and answer the first question. So the first one is your thoughts, and everybody in the panel, your thoughts and observations on paper supply for the corrugated industry in December 2020 and Jan 2021. Phil, if you could answer a few questions in that.
Certainly, Neil. Thank you for that, and good morning, everybody. I think the supply for the UK, as Paul has alluded to, was very tough in December, particularly with complex downtime at some of the major UK mills, which added to the complexity of it. Imports continued fine. I think in January, the major importers to the UK has been okay. Most of, I believe, dealt with Brexit in a relatively planned manner. I think, as Paul alluded to, coming in by truck has been complicated and expensive for some of the big importers. And that has constricted supply a little bit during January. But I think overall, I would say supply in January is reasonable on the paper side, Neil.
Great, lovely, thank you.
Globally, I would say kraftliner is a little more difficult. American kraftliner coming into Europe is reduced dramatically. And Paul might comment on that as well.
But let me ask Froker if you could come in on this same question, and then we'll get Paul at the end.
Okay, thank you, Neil. I'd also say that as we've already seen, there was this unexpected surge in demand. Many people told me that demand was even higher last year than they've seen the year before. And at the same time, there was restrictions in the supply. And as you know, if the supply is short, this fuels even more demand. So the bookings on the side of the paper mills were even rising. And there were some logistics problems adding to this. You've seen all the pictures of the full lorry parks in Kent. So it was difficult to get material from the continent into Europe. So this added to the problems that were already there.
Thank you, Froker. And Paul?
Most of the kraftliner coming into the UK comes by vessel. Some kraftliner substitute comes by truck, and it was a problem. And we all know there were 2 days in particular which caused complete mayhem. But I agree with what Phil said. Most of it went fairly smoothly, probably much more smoothly than other industries, food industry, for example. With regards to US kraftliner, the US is a very integrated market as well. And most US kraftliner does stay at home. So when the domestic demand goes up by 10%, there's very little left for export. And then we feel the draft in the UK. If domestic demand drops, export goes up significantly, and then we feel a flood of cheap American kraftliner over here, and particularly in Southern Europe. So the US situation does affect our kraftliner prices a lot.
Thank you, Paul. And Froker, can I ask to be brief as well, how you see the supply and demand for the rest of Q1 and beyond?
I would anticipate that there might be a little bit of easing, but it depends on whether we'll see the normal decrease in demand, which we have in February. So it's not clear whether this will materialize. When I talked with people last time, it wasn't really visible. I think that the new capacities will start to be felt a little. So I think the situation should be a bit easier, but I don't think there will be a real rebalancing. It should get easier, but not, it will stay a little tight.
Got it. That's good. Phil, your view?
Thank you, Neil. Q1 and beyond, I think the new capacities, some of which I think Paul has said are delayed in coming on stream, will begin to make the situation a little more normal. I don't think it will be oversupplied. It all depends on demand for corrugated. There is huge demand for export outside of Europe at the moment, which the mills, the new capacity coming on stream is taking advantage of. The pricing is very good. So the exports outside of Europe this year, in 2020, grew by 25%. So there's large volume going abroad to Latin America, to Africa, and to Asia as well, not just China. So good demand from all over the world, really. And I think that will keep things in balance for the first 6 months of the year.
That's very interesting. Paul, anything to add to this question? How you see supply and demand for Q1?
I think it's very important. I agree with everything said so far. I think it's very important to keep an eye on the maintenance shuts. A shut, we're going to see lots of maintenance shuts now in Q1 and Q2. Maintenance shuts are typically 1 week. In round numbers, that's 25% of capacity of a mill. It's a lot of tons that we won't have for that reason, which we're used to, but normally we can handle it as we have the normal seasonality. This year it's probably going to be different because we're coming with such low stock positions. So if I was a corrugator, I'd keep my stock up. For me, the interesting bit is how many orders for sheet and boxes have been doubled out there because of the shortage in demand. Because of course, when things start to flow a bit more normally, some of these orders will be cancelled overnight, and that of course could have a potentially big impact on
very good point, Paul. I see a lot of nodding heads there, and as you say, I think this is, I remember when working with Walkers, they used to talk about this sort of a spring up and down of demand because of one small change, and it looks as though, as you say, there's a reaction to a number of things that are causing false demand. Last question, and Frauke, if I may ask you on this one, as paper containerboard is a worldwide traded commodity, what effect does China have on shortages and therefore on price here in the UK?
I've seen figures for the China exports from Europe, and they increased massively on 2019. So I think that China, even if it's far away, does have a massive effect, not only on the UK, but also on the whole of Europe, in my opinion.
Great, thank you. And Phil, your thoughts on this subject?
I agree with Frauke. If mills have spare capacity, mills are generally very loyal to their customer base. So if a mill typically sells in 5 European markets, just because China pops up with a better ex-mill price doesn't necessarily mean that the mill will take advantage of that. However, for the new capacities that I think the market is looking towards to balance the supply and demand for Europe, they will look at that. I think they'll look at those opportunities, and they'll take them where they can.
And just to finish off, Paul, from yourself on the same question.
Not an expert on China, but China is a bigger market than Europe. I think that's important. China no longer imports waste paper. That's going to have a massive effect. And at the moment, I think exports to China from Northern Western Europe, which is my patch, is completely gone, virtually gone, because the paper is not available. And like Phil said, mills tend to look after their established customer base, which will be here tomorrow.
Great. Thank you very much to all three panelists. So in summary, demand for corrugated is high and looks as though it's continuing to be high, but there is capacity coming on board, and hopefully this flux in demand is leveling out in Q1 and Q2. Thank you very much to Frauke, to Paul, and to Phil. And there is a poll, and if people would like to vote on it, that'll be great. And if they'd like further information from any of us, then please do register, and I'm sure that all of us will be prepared to give you some details. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much, Neil, for your report, and thank you to our esteemed panelists. Next up, we have a live supplier spotlight from Graham Tatham, who is General Manager of in the UK and Ireland for Siegwerk. So supplier spotlight from Siegwerk. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to thank the SPA for giving me this opportunity to introduce Siegwerk to those members who don't already know us, and to bring to you the latest development in our goal to rethink solutions for paper and board packaging in a circular economy. Siegwerk is a family-owned company who have a 190-year history in ink technology. Headquartered in Siegburg in Germany And with 16 centres of excellence and 50 blending centres around the world, we service customers in over 100 countries and have sales of over €1 billion. Here in the UK, our business is based in Swadlincote, Derbyshire, where we manufacture and stock a full range of inks, varnishes and technical barrier coatings. We also have a laboratory to undertake colour matching and product analysis, whilst a team of technical account managers support customers in their businesses. So here at Siegwerk, we are committed to developing packaging solutions for a circular economy. As you all know, a circular economy is about more than just recycling. It's based on 3 principles of designing out waste, keeping products and materials in use, and regenerating natural resources. Printing inks are an enabler for circular packaging solutions. Our latest development on this path to a circular economy is Uni Nature. Uni Nature Extenders, our 3rd generation of renewable inks, are formulated with a high biorenewable content, replacing acrylic resins with natural products. These extenders are combined with our uni-based concentrates to produce inks with a biorenewable content at least 6 times greater than standard products. The Uni Nature range has already been qualified by BOBST, where they were assessed in live print trials for stability, drying speed, trapping, foaming, and plate cleaning. In addition to being found to have good colour strength for high-speed printing on coated and uncoated substrates, the Uni Nature range is easy to exchange for standard inks with no need to change processes or colour matchings. Uni Nature makes a real contribution to the realisation of a circular economy. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you very much. That was great. There's a quick poll on your screen there. If you wouldn't mind answering that, that's great. Thank you very much indeed. Next up, we have a very interesting session. We work very closely with the Confederation of Paper Industries, CPI, and I'm delighted to have with us today Andrew Large, who's Director General of CPI. I've got a few questions for Andrew, which I'm sure he would be happy to answer. So, Andrew, are you with us? Can we see you?
I'm certainly here, I hope, Tim.
Very good. Excellent. That's great. First question for you, Andrew. How does CPI interact with the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategies, or BEIS, as we've come to know them? Do we have a voice as an industry? And how have we influenced decisions and policy making thus far? And the second part to that question, I guess, is how have and how can SPA members help in this process?
No, well, thank you, Tim. I mean, it's one of the most important things that that CPI does, is to actually act as a representative and a voice for the industry, not just with BEIS, but actually across the whole of government. So we have regular meetings with officials and indeed with ministers, and we very clearly want to make sure that the government is taking into account the interests of all of the UK's paper-based industries, while they're developing policy, whether it's with regard to COVID or any of the other subjects that we have to deal with. Now, if you look at the things that we've been able to do recently, I guess there are 3 that I'd probably like to pull out. The first is, in the very earliest days of the COVID pandemic, we were able to work with government to make sure that the majority of the UK's paper-based industries were deemed as being critical and were therefore able to continue to operate during the first lockdown, able to continue doing the very, very important supplies to the packaging needs for the food industry and also the hygiene needs for the NHS and for domestic consumers. And related to that, which I guess is the second achievement, is that we were also able to work with government on how you work safely. So a lot of the working safely guidance that goes across the whole of manufacturing industry actually started with the learnings from the way paper companies were able to keep operating and packaging converters were able to keep operating safely during the early days of the pandemic. And I think we've been very influential in actually assisting much of manufacturing industry to remain operational during this time. I think if I wanted to pull out a third one that's recently, it's about the recyclability guidelines that CPI has put together. They've been hugely influential in working with both BEIS and OPRL on issues around recyclability and issues around showing and demonstrating that the products that this industry produces are actually sustainable, they contribute towards net zero, and they're part of the future of the British economy and the future of the way in which this industry will operate. Now, to answer the second part of your question, Tim, in terms of how you contact, I know that you and SPA overall have got a really good relationship with Andy Barnettson, and I would very, very much encourage you to continue to engage with him and to use your representation through Ken Shackleton on the CPI Corrugated Council to be able to bring issues to our attention. And we're very, very happy to work with Sheep Plant Association to consider those issues and make sure that we can promote them to government in the best way that we can.
That's brilliant. Thank you for that. It's important that our members realise how busy you've been behind the scenes, and that work is going on a daily basis. So thank you very much for that. What consultations and discussions are in the pipeline at the moment, Andrew, that our members should be aware of?
I think I'd like to draw people's attention back to the famed DEFRA consultations that came out, must be now very nearly 2 years ago, have been placed into abeyance as a result of COVID, but we now understand are scheduled to return to a second round of consultation in March this year. So they cover extended producer responsibility, so the subsequent scheme to PRNs. They cover deposit return schemes and the scope of those. They cover collection methodologies for domestic recycling, and they also cover the plastics tax. And I think those four coming back to be consulted on again, getting much closer towards their point of implementation, getting much more now into the fine detail. I don't think I need to remind this group that some of the estimates of the cost of extended producer responsibility are really quite eye-watering across this industry as a whole, into the billions of pounds potentially, depending upon who you read and whose analysis you believe in. But there is clearly an awful lot at stake here. And there's certainly going to be an area where CPI is going to put an awful lot of time in the months to come. And I would very much encourage input to that process from SPA.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm sure you'll be batting very hard on our behalf. I don't think many of us look forward to the idea of more stealth taxes for box makers and box users, but there we go. We've heard that the government have ambitions to do COVID testing for all critical workers in the UK. We assume that this will or has cascaded down into our industry. Can you give us some clarity as to if this will happen and how it will be achieved and likely timescales?
Okay, it's a mixed picture, Tim. I need to put the caveat in to what I'm about to say, which is that it only applies for businesses with over 250 employees. And so I don't know how many of your members are going to be in that category. If you are in that category of over 250 employees, it starts now. There are webinars going on this week from the government. I know Andy Barnettson has already circulated to the Corrugated Council listing, so Ken and your colleagues, Tim, will have had that. The government is launching the process as we speak. There are webinars taking place between 2 and 2:45 p.m. every day this week to give people an opportunity to understand how the process is going to work. There is an email address, employee.testing@beis.gov.uk, that people can correspond with if they want to take part in this. But I can only reiterate that thus far it's only for businesses employing greater than 250 people. And I have no insight as to when it might be cascaded down to smaller businesses than that.
That's great, Andrew. Thank you. Interestingly, we were notified by Shropshire Council, Dairy Pack being in Shropshire, that this is being rolled out on a sort of county by county level as well. So I think anything that falls beneath the 250 employees is going to be mopped up on a local basis, as my initial understanding of that issue. So thank you. Andrew, I'm conscious of time. Is there anything else on the CPI radar at the moment that you'd like to share with SPA members?
I've got three things, I suppose. The first, and with apologies to Frauke for following her lead, I'd like to mention the B word again. What might or might not have been a big bang on the 1st of January 2021 is proving to be somewhat of a slow burn. And it's clearly something that is going to be occupying our minds for some months to come, resolving sort of trade and freight issues on behalf of members, you know, complicated issues like rules of origin, necessary customs forms, and so on and so forth. And also, as was alluded to in the previous session, the fact that the cost of freight transit from China to the UK has gone up by a factor of 4 in recent weeks. Yeah, there are clearly some significant disturbances in the international trade arena, and we need to keep ourselves on top of those. Second item is, I think, related to COVID, which is a more general focus on industry health and safety. This health pandemic has put a lot of focus on what is going on inside businesses, how are they able to continue to operate safely, more generally about the health and welfare of workforces and so on. We're very, very closely involved with PABIAC, and we are making sure that we're putting forward the issues of the industry through those conversations that we have with both the health and safety executive and also the trade union movement, and I would encourage you to engage with that again through Andy Barnettson. And the third area is, although the UK has left the European Union, we are still looking at the Single-Use Plastics Directive and the potential issues that are coming out from that. It sort of sits in a slightly hybrid place because the directive was agreed before the UK left, but the implementing legislation is now being done after we've left. So there's some sort of grey area as to how much of this is going to apply in the UK. We know for a fact that some of the devolved assemblies, Wales in particular, are already looking at the Single-Use Plastics Directive and seeing that as inspiration for what they'd like to do in the UK. And there are dark rumblings in Brussels of an overall plan to attack single-use packaging overall rather than single-use plastics. And we are going to be very, very mindful of that.
Great. Well, thank you very much for that, Andrew. And again, thank you for batting so hard for our industry and for all paper-based industries. Thank you for your time today, Andrew. I know you've got to shoot to another appointment now, but many thanks indeed. That's Andrew Large, Director General of the CPI. We're moving on next to one of Andrew Large's colleagues, no stranger to conference. We all know Andy Barnettson, apologies. So Andy is going to be giving us an update on the activity of the Corrugated Promotional Committee that the Sheet Plant Association helps fund. So thank you.
Thank you, Tim, and good morning, everybody. I don't know if colleagues can see my slides. I'm not seeing them on my screen yet. Ah, marvelous. Thank you once again. Good morning, all. So, most of you will have heard me speak before about our promotional work. Recall that in years gone by, we used to approach the trade press with the intention of getting out to your customers and to the retailers. But then 2 or 3 years ago, we decided to change the focus and go out to the consumer. The intention being that if we can win over hearts and minds, then the pressure comes to the brand owner and to the retailer from the other side. So for 2 or 3 years now, with our Beyond the Box programme, we've been seeking to influence consumers across the country. I don't have very long today. If you want further information, it's all on that website that you see, cardboard.org.uk. Thank you. Next slide, please. So in very brief summary, our work last year is across these images. In the top left, you see the pizza box. We had some made up specially with all of our key messages on, and these went out to a number of social media influencers on Instagram. And we invited them to make their own posts around pizza boxes and recyclability. And that was all very successful in Q1. Just below that, also in Q1, we went out to the youth magazine First News with our advertorial Be a Recycling Superhero, targeting specifically here a youth audience that we wouldn't otherwise reach with our messaging. Below that again, you can see the radio stations that we went out to in Q2. By then, of course, pandemic in force, lockdown, and we had to change our program. So we went out with consumer research to the public. How do you feel about recycling? What do you think you might do when we come out of lockdown? And Green in Quarantine went out via those radio stations to some 2 million or so listeners in Q2. By Q3, we had the video you can see represented in the middle. It went out to the Sun and the Mirror newspapers, and the host on the left speaking to some of the people on the right. And that video is very well received, not just those nationals, but to about 150 regional newspaper websites as well. And we were talking there about people's opinions on the cost of being green. Does it cost me more to buy green? And how do I feel about that? That video, very well received, upwards of 250 million audience for that. Top right, our image in Q3 with online illustrator Paperboyo, famous for silhouette images that presented in unusual circumstances. And we commissioned Paperboyo to do the image you see there, as if cleaning up the countryside. And that gives us the chance to talk about the importance of cardboard compared to other materials. Very well received, that one, in the Evening Standard. And bottom right, some of you may not have seen before, the Celebrity Sustainability Hero, an online and public vote. And as I hope you can see from the image, Sir David Attenborough won, and we're still in the process of promoting that. Thank you. Next slide, please. So a few summaries from that. We were in the hundreds of thousands for the Instagram posts. We had our own social media, which I haven't even mentioned on previous slide, and that to more than 1 million people. Radio up on the previous year, media mentions up on previous year, and that's just Q1 to 3. We were already ahead of media in 2019. And the total results, the reach last year was potentially up to 360 million. That's a huge number. Technically, everybody in the country heard our messages 5 times over. Of course, it doesn't work quite like that. But the point is we're dealing in some very big numbers. And if it's just 1% of that, then we've done extremely well. Thank you. So looking ahead to the coming year, again, a quarterly approach. Q1 is about happiness, all boxed up, the experience of having the home delivery, tying very much into current circumstances. And we're looking for consumer research around happiness of the box that arrives on your doorstep, national media placement, and we're tying in with National Happiness Day in March. Q2, social media influencers again, Instagram, around the trendy concept of upcycling. What do we do with old boxes? Slightly obscure topics perhaps, but it's the way you get the media hook. It's the way you get in to the national press, to the social media, to the public, and that gives us a chance to use our messages. Next slide, please. So concluding with 2021, I haven't had time to do justice to this. There's a lot going on, but the biggest thing for us this year, we're going out with our own social media channels. Previous social media has been dark posting, effectively an advert on your timeline. This year, we're going to have our own channels on Instagram and Facebook from April. So a big change for us this year. Own channels on Facebook and Instagram is big news. There's a lot going on. That's all I have time for. Thank you for your support. SPA is involved in this. You do make a handsome financial contribution to this. We thank you for your time. So if there's anything that you'd want to add, you do have representation on our promotional committee through Neil Osmond. Speak to him or speak to me. Always happy to take ideas. Thank you, Tim.
Andy, thank you very much for that. Spot on timing, as I would expect no less from a seasoned professional like yourself. So thank you very much indeed, Andy. Right, moving swiftly on, we do have another supplier spotlight. This one's rather special because the next spotlight is from our conference sponsor, Metzer Group. So we thank them very much for sponsoring this event. If any supplier members would like to sponsor further events, please do let us know. But this next presentation is from Metzer Group, our conference sponsor.
The market, it's in turbulence and everyone is looking for better and more sustainable packaging solutions. Speed is very important and collaboration is the key to speed up. I'm very excited about the new Excellence Center and innovation collaboration that makes it possible.
Well, at the moment, replacing the plastic, that's the biggest thing that will have an effect to every kind of packaging.
I would say that one of the main themes of sustainability is to reduce the amount of material used. We want to suggest lightweight materials and we want to suggest solutions that is fit to purpose so that we avoid overpacking. We are supporting the sustainability targets.
Together with our customers and partners, we can co-create packaging solutions that address the whole product life cycle, from material development to the production and design for recyclability. So the new Excellence Center, it helps us to accelerate innovation. We have very strong competence in design and R&D, as well as the wide partner network. So together we can create the perfect package.
In Metzer Board, we do the innovation together with our customers, together with partners like research organizations, universities. So we are not working alone. It's a collaboration and we want to do it faster than others.
I think this space is great because it collects all the talented people, the professionals under the same roof, so we can create something amazing for the future.
Thank you to Metzer, a valued supplier member and, as I mentioned, event sponsor today. We do have another poll coming up on screen shortly. This one, again, is another anonymous poll, looking at how you consider or how you think your business will do over the next 6 months. Very interesting. This is anonymous, so you're not giving away any secrets. We just need to know what your view is for the next 6 months. Do you think your business will do better, will perform the same, or will do worse? It's useful to get a straw poll on things like this. So if you wouldn't mind taking a second to answer that poll, that would be much appreciated. I have done mine, so thank you. Next up, we have a conference regular, Andy Ely from TUV UK, who is our retained health and safety specialist, is going to give us his brief health and safety update.
I think Katie has the slide. Hopefully those gestures are not directed at me personally. Okay, what we're going to focus on this morning is a bit more concentration on something we touched on last time we met, talking about off-site workers and particularly drivers. And the reason we would do that is because you are in less control of their working conditions. You're not in control of the places they have to go and visit. They have to go out and about, and they have to come into contact with other people, that you are furthermore not in control of. So the danger of failure to abide by good working practices during the pandemic is probably greater for them than it is for others workers, including those off-site home workers, and particularly those on your sites where you are in direct control. So the risks or the problems, if we can have the first slide, please, Katie, thanks. Out of sight, out of mind. Generally, drivers will have a lack of direct supervision. They're coming and going at all different times of the day. They may not actually return to your base where you are. They may be parking up, meeting elsewhere. Generally, this is reduced communications as well, changes to working practice, and lack of welfare facilities possibly as well are the risks and the problems. But particularly the communication issues could be leading to failure to abide by good working practices, and they are vulnerable as they're out and about in contact with others as well. What can we do about it? Ensure effective, frequent communication. We can talk for the rest of the afternoon about this, and if you paid me handsomely, I'll be very happy to do that. But I'm sure I'll be cut off very soon if I did go on about it. There are very many different ways that you may be able to achieve this, but it's difficult at the moment, especially because of the lack of ability to interact personally. But there are various things that you could do, you could try, but it would be extra effort. Simply putting up notices is not guaranteed to be effective. You can get permission to use personal email addresses to send out information. However, if you want decent feedback and you want to encourage correct COVID-related behaviours, then some kind of personal face-to-face contact in a controlled group is normally the best way to achieve this. Just touching again on something that Tim and Andrew Large were talking about. There is one member that I've spoken to that is taking advantage of and encouraging 2 weekly symptom-free lateral flow COVID testing, which is available to those unable to work from home. Drivers, of course, fall into that category. At least we haven't got the technology yet, or I haven't seen it, that enables a driver to work from home. So it's worth checking the county council, local authority websites, because as I think was mentioned, they seem to be in charge of this, and there can be a result in 30 minutes for this. So it's not hanging around all day, you get a quick response. I believe that you can legitimately repeat this test every 2 weeks. The advantage of that is it's an extra string to your bow, if you like. So a bit more reinforcement and reassurance as well. And I think also that the people themselves would appreciate cooperating with this. They'd appreciate having the ability to take this test. Another thing to touch on, I think we mentioned it before as well, but just to highlight it again, to ensure the driver's right to appropriate welfare facilities on other premises that they would be visiting. We have had stories where visiting drivers have been told to go and seek alternative facilities, shall we say, rather than those on the sites that they're visiting. All of us have a legal right to ensure that our legitimate visitors have access to appropriate welfare facilities, and there is a joint open letter available for the Department of Transport and HSE on the link in front of you. Just one last thing to mention, our big brother BSI has published an ISO PAS standard, PAS Publicly Accessible Standard 45005, and these are new global guidelines for safe working during the pandemic. They have produced previous guidelines, but I think these are the latest ones, and they have the status of an international global guideline. And unusually for BSI, this is a free download as well, rather than costing you several hundred guineas. You may have to sign up and you may have to tolerate a couple of emails before you unsubscribe, but all you've got to do is go to the BSI site and search for PAS 45005 45005, and you will have access to this new global international guideline for safe working. That's all I'm going to say.
Great, thank you very much, Andy. I would urge you, if you've got any health and safety questions, to use the free hotline, either email or telephone Andy, and he'll be delighted to talk to you or respond to you in fairly short order, and hopefully that will be helpful to you. So thank you very much, Andy. Moving swiftly on, our next presenter, we're very fortunate to have Mark Pinches, who is head of coaching for Westfield Health. Now, the Sheep Plant Association has been working closely with Westfield Health. We need to look at the health and well-being of our employees for sure. On our regular calls, we've seen cracks appearing in a lot of our staff members. So we've got a presentation today about mental health and well-being, and the opportunity to appoint a health and well-being officer. And there is a good offer at the end of this presentation for all SPA members to help you on the way. So I'd introduce to you Mark Pinches, Head of Coaching for Westfield Health.
Right, well, very good morning, everybody. Thanks very much for the opportunity to chat to you today. I think I'll start by posing a question really and ask whether or not you feel, and maybe you feel, that the people around you are being the best versions of themselves at the moment with all the pressures that are going on. We're all trying our best, aren't we, to survive during difficult times and carrying on with the things that we know in terms of systems and protocols and just the way we do things, what we need to do. But one of the areas that we know and started to see a very negative impact on everything that's going on with regard to uncertainty is the mental health of our teams. So I'm just really going to sort of share some ideas with you just to begin with, and as Tim sort of rightly said, to maybe give you an idea of something that you can do in these sort of times of uncertainty. I've got a few slides which I'm going to share with you. So if you just bear with me while I pop the slide onto the screen. And just remind you of a couple of things really in relation to, sorry, are you just seeing a single slide at the moment? I hope that one, yeah. So are we being the best versions of we can? If we look at some of the mental health issues that have happened over the last 9 or 10 months, a lot of the figures have gone up in terms of people experiencing two of the main mental health sort of challenges, and that's anxiety and depression. It's inevitable as we go through sort of slightly more challenging times, and it's happened many times in history. I don't have to sort of remind you that we're quite a resilient species. There are things that come along that give us an opportunity to be stronger. And one of the things that I suppose has happened over the last few months is that we've seen the importance of the communication process, the supportive networks that we as human beings are pretty good at. We've sat around campfires for many thousands of years listening to people. And that really, and the reason I'm mentioning that is it's quite significant, is to, sorry, I'm just getting a little note now. Have you actually got, can I just get a quick nod that I'm getting the right slide in front of you? Is it? You're not, right, okay. I'll change display settings to that one. Is that the correct one? It's slightly different from my screen. No, okay, right, sorry about that. I was hoping that you would have seen a single slide, but for some reason that's not coming through. Right, I might as well do it to get it right, because it helps the story, so apologies for that if it's not, it actually says it's, you've got it, okay, oh no, you have, right, thank you, sorry, I'm getting very good at sign language here, so yeah, apologies. So yeah, going back to the mental health of our people. I just wanted to draw your attention to the fact that, you know, it's something that we are all experiencing at the moment to one degree or another. In fact, 1 in 4 of us, again, have a recognized change in our behaviors. And I think it's important that we do something that we as a human species do very well. And that's to observe and to be part of our groups, be part of our teams. And the best people really to do that aren't always, and it was interesting, Tim, you mentioned earlier on a sort of a mental health first aid officer or mental health officer. Yes, indeed, at the level of overall seeing of what's going on with regard to welfare and mental health in an organisation. A mental health officer is quite a good idea. What we're talking about here, however, is ears and eyes on the ground, and particularly in terms of mental health first aid, there's a lot of opportunity to be able to observe at a closer level our colleagues, to be able to make sure we're aware of the support systems that exist within the organisation through a recognised training course of mental health first aid. And we're all pretty good at it, actually. It's just that we need to slow down sometimes and look at the things which we do very well as a human species when the dust settles and things are okay, but we do it particularly well when we're under pressure. And the suggestion is that if we had more of a network of mental health first aiders within the organisation, we could observe those things that we need to do to nip in the bud. And that's usually the way that things with anxiety and depression, negative mood states, shall we say, will be solved. We don't need to go down any complex routes of care in terms of taking people out of the system, recognising through the normal NHS type processes and support and counselling. Most of what we're talking about with 1 in 4 people at the moment experiencing a pressure and a challenge will be solved by nipping something in the bud, and mental health first aiders will help that process, certainly in the first stages, and normally be the solution. The fact is, it's worth doing it now because it's affecting us not only from a point of view of our duty of care to the people that we work with, but also our organisations. You know, the organisation best version of itself that it can be at the moment. We talk about thriving and surviving, and yes, a lot of people will say, well, we're surviving these challenging times, but a lot of organisations are thriving by bringing people closer together and doing the things that indeed seem to work better when we're stretched, when we're stretched together. A lot of the issues don't arise from necessarily pressure in work. Most of the mental health problems or challenges at the moment is to do with what's going on obviously outside that environment, but it doesn't mean to say that what's happening in our work environment themselves and the support that we spend most of our waking hours with the people that we work with can't be a place where we could find some solutions. So it's going to affect us all, and certainly from a point of view of where we can find a solution, mental health first aid is a good sort of start point. Now look, there's a lot of mental health conditions. I'm not going to by any stretch of the imagination go into these. We're talking about sort of the 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock here, you know, anxiety disorders and depression. We've seen significant increases in people's feelings of anxiety, certainly low mood and depression. And that is the area that we can do something about, because we can quite often see the signs and symptoms in an early stage. So you saw on one of the earlier slides, I had well-being has a number of facets, but if we are interacting well, if we are engaging well, and you know, we ebb and flow with regard to our mental health state regularly, but if we have a degree of physical vitality and a mood which generally ebbs and flows but sometimes has a good angle to it, well then we're probably coping, and the key one is whether we're sleeping okay. As soon as we start to struggle, we reach a tipping point, and what quite often happens here is that we start to see an impact, not only how we feel about things mentally, but we see things that are different. We see different behaviours, and people start to show signs and symptoms themselves. And if we don't move back into that comfort zone, what happens, we move over to the right-hand side of that spectrum, where we will start to feel that our physical health might be impacted upon long-term, and our persistent low mood is something which obviously could then manifest itself later on down the line. Well, look, we know that if we intervene quickly, we can see the people in the middle ground. We're all very good, we're all very adept at being able to identify, if we have the time and make the time, just to experience and listen and to see people at that deeper level, which we're all, you know, particularly good at. You know, we've had a lifetime and an evolutionary process of being very good at it, as I said earlier on. So with the mental health first aiders course that we run, we normally do this as an in-house course, and we've now made this available from a point of view of online. Let's Zoom and do the things that everybody else does. What we've got here is an opportunity for people right across the board, a diagonal cross section really, of people would benefit from this process, because we need to have colleagues who can open up to other colleagues. Sometimes the recognized systems where we would have somebody who's necessarily the line of approach to the support that we don't want somebody to talk about. There's a stigma associated with these quite often. But if we can have colleagues who are the eyes and ears, as I said earlier on, promote early intervention, even opening up channels just for somebody to start a crucial conversation, as the case might be, it can nip something in the bud. And mental health first aiders are ideally placed to be able to look for these signs and symptoms and carry on with their normal function, and have to be necessarily just doing this. Is something that they can incorporate every day. So 2-day recognized course will be a qualification. It's something which doesn't really require any form of qualification other than going through this course. A good colleague, a good emotionally intelligent individual who's a good listener, can show empathy, compassion and understanding and be non-judgmental. And a confident individual, and quite honestly, sometimes a person who's experienced some pressures themselves, would be ideally placed to go on a 2-day mental health first aider course, which is run now as a sequence, particularly working on an online basis. Works in with our normal work patterns. There's some work that's done pre each of 4 sessions, and literally we're talking about a couple of half a day sessions, which will qualify people to go back into the workplace with confidence to be able to do all of those sort of things that we know will make such a difference during these pressured times. But then go on to look at that in the future as to how we can all be better versions of ourselves. SPA have very generously offered to fund the course. So whereas normally we would have looked at £300 per delegate, that's half price now. There are some learning materials that need to be purchased as well. We need 12 people, and collectively from SPA members, we can find 12 to enroll in that course. And if you think it would be something that would work well, I can sort of guarantee it will. If we can get 12 people together, I think it's a good first step of helping to support people during these challenging times. So there's some food for thought. We can certainly provide more information for you if need be. I'll link Carol, who's involved with SPA and has been for a little while, will be available to answer questions. I can be here to answer some questions if you have any at the moment, Tim, but that's food for thought. Thanks for offering to fund this as well and make it a much more attractive offer for members to come and well worth thinking about. It's proven how useful it's been over the last few months. I mean, it's been around for a long time, but certainly over the last few months, we've got more and more courses happening, and it's that foot on the ground which is making all the difference in many organisations and allowing people to be the best versions that they can themselves.
Great, thank you very much indeed, Mark. That was brilliant. I know our own company, Dairy Pack, will be putting people forward onto that course. So just to be clear, if you were to go out and buy this course, it would cost you £300 plus some learning materials. The Sheep Plant Association is going to help fund this. We feel so strongly that we should be getting our people through this course and having some useful first aiders on the floor in this area. So we will be funding half of it, so it will be £150. We will also pick up the learning materials cost as well, so it's just £150 per person. So thank you very much indeed, Mark. I'll let you get off now. I know you've got a busy day ahead of you today. Moving swiftly on, we have another supplier spotlight up next from BW Paper Systems. Martin McTighe is presenting, so BW Paper Systems.
Yeah, hi, Martin McTighe, BW Paper Systems. You may know our brands, Markrip, Wargenizers, Curioni, and Vortex Starch Kitchens. And we've got a short video just to show you our corrugator and converting machine. Thank you. You were on mute there, Tim, sorry. You're still on mute.
There we go. Thank you very much. First technical of the day. That's what happens when your daughter walks past. She momentarily distracts you. Anyway, thank you very much, Martin and BW Paper Systems. And next, we have a short 2-minute spotlight from Domino Print.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ben Gilisi from Domino Printing. I'm the European Sales Manager for Digital Corrugated, and I have personally been in the corrugated industry for 15 years. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to introduce myself and Domino to everyone at the SPA. Here at Domino, we have worked with inkjet technology for over 40 years. Today, we provide digital printing systems to many different markets, from digital label presses through to coding and marking equipment. The next market that we wanted to work in was corrugated packaging. We have spent over 4 years developing our corrugated digital print solutions, and we are proud to have developed what we believe is the next generation of digital corrugated printing technology, our X630i. The X630i is water-based, unique to Domino. The key to our system is the AQ95 aqueous ink set that can help facilitate new streams of business by providing both food packaging compliance and the capability for printing on coated and uncoated board types. The machine itself is designed to work as we would expect of a normal corrugated printing machine, such as materials handling and producing product at a consistent level. At the same time, the machine offers all the added benefits that digital printing brings to the market, such as improved short run, short lead time, and reduced waste. Thank you for allowing me to present a brief overview of our offering. For more information, please scan the following QR code on the screen.
Thank you very much to Domino Print, one of our valued supply members. Next up, we've been doing a lot of work in and around the area of BRC, Global Standard, BRCGS. Issue 6 has proved to be quite a step from issue 5. I'd like to introduce to you Robert Herridge, who is our retained BRCGS specialist, to explain the work we've been doing behind the scenes to get some very valuable training to SPA members. So over to you, Robert.
Thank you, Tim, and good morning, everybody. We are running some training courses, as Tim has said. We are going to be running some training courses in the middle of March. We've got 3 different courses on offer. One is about understanding the requirements of BRCGS Packaging Materials Standard Issue 6, and so is really applicable to those sites who haven't yet adopted BRC. We also have an introduction to hazard and risk management analysis, and we have a course looking at internal auditing. The internal auditing course and the hazard and risk analysis course counts as formal training, which is a requirement of the BRC standard. And I know that details will be going live on the website at the end of this call today. In fact, there it is up on the screen. But in addition to the training, I actually want to come to a couple of more pressing matters. Quite a few points to update you on in regards to issue 6. A lot of people have been asking, do I have to have an audit during the pandemic? Don't the government guidelines mean that the auditors have to stay away because they have to hide at home and not come to my site? There are actually a number of options for conducting your audit. Next week is the first anniversary of the launching of issue 6, so a lot of sites may already have had their issue 6 audit. If you have had an issue 6 audit, you can apply to your certification body for a risk assessment. It's done by telephone call, and it will extend your certificate by up to 6 months. If you haven't yet had an issue 6 physical on-site audit, You may opt for a remote audit, which is done partly by phone, partly by email, and a tour of the production facility is carried out either by laptop, my mobile phone, whatever, but the auditor is taken on a tour. We also have a blended audit option, which is being offered by BRC, and that covers a bit of both, where the auditor would arrive, see the production facility, and then leave again, and the paperwork element is done from home by telephone and email. Not all auditors are offering blended and remote audits. The reason for this is I've done 3 myself. They are fairly ineffective. It is hard to see a production facility on a tour by a mobile phone, but also it will depend on your customer base. One thing that you should be aware of is the BRC themselves are accredited to a higher authority called the GFSI, which is the Global Food Standards Initiative, and GFSI do not recognize remote or blended audits. So be aware that will be down to your customer base as to whether they will accept a non-accredited GFSI audit conducted through BRC as a remote or blended audit. Your other option, of course, is to let the auditor on site. The government guidelines are that we should work from home unless it is not possible to do so. I have found that I can't conduct remote audits effectively, so I'm still auditing. I'm going into an audit this afternoon after this call. I've got another audit Thursday, Friday, and I've got more on-site audits next week. But I do respect every site's decision, perhaps to minimise visitors coming on site. And so you have to decide which audit option is going to work best for yourself. Just moving on to the next point, something that's been a bit of a bone of contention over the last year or so with interpretation of clause 5.9.5, where people believe that the way the standard is written, that you cannot store pallets outside and that you must store them inside. And apparently some auditors have also directed sites to do that. That is not the case. It is answered in a document called Issue 6 FAQs. It's available either on the BRC website or it's available from me. If you just drop me an email, I will send you a copy of that document. It picks up on that point and says, do pallets need to be stored inside? And the answer is no, they can be stored outside. They must be suitably protected, and the level of protection is deemed to be at the discretion of the site senior management. So most sites now are protecting a stack of pallets by not using the top pallet. So that's going to protect the stack from bird poo and so on. Leaving them outside lets the air circulate through them, so generally keeps them dry. They might get a little bit damp, but a couple of dry days and they dry out. And not using the base pallet, where you may also get some vermin activity and rodent activity. Other than that, there is no stipulation to cover them. There is no stipulation to build a bus shelter to put them in or bring them inside. And that document is very clear. So if anyone's got any problems with that, please email and I can guide you on that point. The other 2 points to just flag up to the membership are, from time to time, the BRC issue what we call position statements. And these either clarify existing parts of the standard or they introduce new clauses. There are 2 coming up effective from the 1st of July. One is P616, which relates to functional packaging. Functional packaging, you might think all packaging is functional, but they're talking about over and above the basic functionality of packaging. So, for example, barrier films that might extend shelf life and so on. Initially, my thoughts are that that wouldn't necessarily apply to corrugate. However, if you have any kind of waterproof coatings, PE coatings, anything like that, that you are claiming offers a barrier property, then you are going to have to demonstrate how effective that is. And I would suggest that you push the onus on that onto your suppliers supplying you with that board. The second one is P617, which is around allergen control. Potentially, and it is potentially, I'm not convinced yet by this, there is the possibility of allergens being transferred from packaging to product. So for example, chocolate bars, if they have a cold seal, there may be latex in that cold seal, which possibly could transfer to the chocolate. I have made the point myself to the BRC that I don't think that this should be applicable to secondary or tertiary packaging, which would mean it would not be applicable to the corrugate sector. However, I don't write the rules, I don't have the final call on it, and it is under consideration. But for now, you have to assume that those position statements will go live on the 1st of July without further amendment. There may be an update, and if there is, and it's an update between now and the next conference call, then I'll make sure that Tim has a way of communicating that to all the members. I think that's it for the BRC update for today.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed, Robert. If we could just pull up the slide that we had during your presentation. I just want to reiterate, these are 3 separate training sessions. I have some staff who are keen to attend all 3 and some that just want to attend 1. So it is a mix and match. You don't need to commit to all 3. And certain colleagues might want to go on the introduction, which is really the first one, which is good for general operatives to understand the standard. And your people who are expected to do internal audits will definitely want to go for the final session. So these are 3 separate 4-hour training courses on 3 concurrent days, the 15th, the 16th and the 17th of March, and they will cost you nothing. The Sheep Plant Association will be paying Robert for his time. So I implore you to click the poll and express your interest, or let us know at a later date that you would like to attend. You'll be most welcome. Thank you very much indeed, Robert.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have a good friend of mine, someone I used to work with many years ago, almost in a previous life. Some of you may recognise Stuart Lotherington. He is Managing Director of SBR Consultants. And Stuart and I were having a chat some weeks ago about how selling is changing in this virtual world where we are either expected to work from home or certainly can't get in front of customers. So Stuart's going to give us a session now on virtual selling and a very exciting offer for us at the end. So over to Stuart.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, SPA. And it's nice to see so many members enjoying this session today. And I understand, Tim, is that right, that this is basically a break not far after this, I think, is that right? Fantastic. Okay, guys, well, look, I just wanted to sort of share a few things with you. Of course, it's completely unprecedented times. I know the whole of the landscape around cardboard and what's going on in your industry is very, very different to an awful lot of other organizations. And so I just wanted to highlight some of those things. But before I sort of go into that, I just wanted to sort of introduce SBR Consulting and myself, and then introduce later on a colleague of mine, as I said, with a special offer at the end of this session. So first of all, my name is, as Tim said, Stuart Lotherington. I've been in sales as long as Tim has, which means we probably both started at the age of 5, and it's a considerable amount of time. And the company, SBR Consulting, specializes in sales performance. And I know that a few of you have actually been clients of ours, so it's good to see you here today. But what I just wanted to do is just share with you some simple things around actually what do we need to be thinking about as far as what's going on. So what's the current scenario from a sales perspective, and then the areas you might like to consider when it comes to working and making sure that you're getting the most out of the current market conditions, and what to think about so when those market conditions start to even out a bit. But just for a bit of a fun, and just some of those that you might have seen this before, let's start thinking around our mindset and exactly the mindset that we're in, and how we learning and adapting in the current mindset and the way that the market is. So first of all, thinking around it, there's an element of the fact that we have this unconscious incompetency. We don't know what we don't know. We're kind of blissfully ignorant around where we are and what we're doing. Now, the next stage of that learning or that competency would obviously be conscious incompetency. We now know that we don't know. We now know that we're a bit stupid. Okay, and this is a scenario that might have happened to a number of us at the beginning of the pandemic, when things just rapidly changed and we're consciously incompetent. Now, there's two ways to deal with this one. We can either put our head in the sand and just go, well, that's it, I just don't know, or we can actually do something about it. And what's so great about the clients that we've had right now is the vast majority have changed so much around the way they engage with their clients. And the reason for sharing this with you is that they've gone into this conscious competency. Now, conscious competency, as you can imagine, is that you now know, you're aware, you now know what you need to do. But the thing about it is it's actually uncomfortable. And because it's just different. And I'll demonstrate that for you in a second. And then, of course, the last stage is that we're unconsciously competent. We're good at what we're doing. Now, the reason for sharing this is that a lot of you are doing very, very well indeed, and you're doing a great job out there. The thing is that when you think about this as far as a driving analogy is concerned, quite often what we're doing is, excuse me, is that we're going out there doing the same thing and expecting the same results, and that doesn't always happen. And when we think about it from a driving analogy, we'd have a tendency to pick up bad habits. Now, I know that for a fact. I mean, we don't get a chance to drive an awful lot, but I actually did the other day. And guess what? Picked up by a speed camera, and I've now got a virtual online driving awareness course. I'm sure I'm the only person in the UK that's done that. I know how awful and evil I am of breaking the speed limit. But of course, I'm guilty of picking up some bad habits when it comes to my driving. And the reality is, if you don't really know this until something happens. And because of course, if you're picking up bad habits, you potentially could be in stage 1. And that's kind of the key thing around this. Now, I've been lucky enough to talk to people like the global head of sales enablement for GlaxoSmithKline last week. We also work very closely with a behavioral scientist called Steve Martin. I'm not the actor, by the way. And they're highlighting that there are some real things that you should be changing and adapting when it comes to your virtual engagement with your clients. And if there isn't a conscious effort to do that, we've just all sort of fallen into it and grabbed it, and we still are making mistakes, like Mr. Gray here, still going on mute when he was talking well to us. I mean, that's got to be the statement, isn't it, of 2020 and probably 2021, you're on mute. So the thing is with regards to that is, what are we doing about changing that to make sure we're doing that? Now, the exercise, I mean, you've been sat down all day going through all this stuff. Simple exercise, just everybody that is on here, just for a second, just fold your arms and just check which arm you got over the top. Is it your left arm or your right arm? And then undo them and then put the other arm on top. Now, it probably, some of you are still struggling to do that, okay? But whatever it is, the normal conclusion that we come to with doing that is it's uncomfortable. It doesn't feel right. And that's absolutely the case around how we have effective communication with our clients. It is, if we're not making that conscious effort to change certain things about the way that we engage with our clients, we'll go back to the way we've always done it, and it might not be working for us. So let me just give you an example of a few of those things in here. First of all, let's think about it. How many of you are actually having phone calls anymore? It's almost like it's died, right? We're all gone to the virtual world and it's all just done virtually. And so therefore, we need to be thinking that we need to adapt our style accordingly. Now, with regards to your industry, you're in that lucky position where there is absolutely huge demand right now for your services, your products. And of course, it's all gone through the roof, and it's all been a brilliant space. I've spoken to a number of you in the SPA, and some of you are saying that it's, we haven't seen anything like this for more than 15, 20 years in the industry, which is a phenomenal, great position to be in, but it does offer its own innate challenges. And one of those is obviously your lead times have dramatically increased. And of course, that means that you could be letting down clients. You could have some great relationships that are under threat. These relationships could potentially be under threat as a result of these lead times, and people just expecting the same service that you've been able to provide them for all the years preceding this. The other thing is that we also are probably getting lots of inquiries. Now, loads of inquiries. Mrs. Miggin's tea shop, I'm sure I got that from somewhere. She's decided now that she wants to go and send out her cupcakes to everybody. And so you've got an order of 4 boxes. How do you decipher that one to somebody like Germany, Amazon, phoning up some of you saying, actually, I could do with a very large order, and actually sorting that out. Now, there's all those kind of key challenges of how do you sort the wheat from the chaff when it comes to it, because every time the phone goes, we're answering it in the same sort of way. And then, of course, there is a massive challenge with the way that we engage with our clients. A lot of you are so used to being on the road, handshakes, looking people in the eyes, that relationship management is out there. And of course, we've established that for a very long time. But the thing is, the relationship selling technique and methodology is seriously being challenged. And of course, the last one is that if you are looking for new clients, we're just going to have to be looking at it a very different way. So we have to go and think about how we're going to be adding people to the top of our pipeline for our new clients. Well, very quickly, let's just go through some of those sort of things in there. All right, the thing is around with the phone, we need to be looking at it. When we first started from our home office, everything was fine and it was great to have the cat jumping on our laps and the children running around, and we can't necessarily do anything about that because I think tying them up and locking them in a room is not legal. But the point being is that you should be doing the best you can with your virtual setup. And everybody sort of went into it straight away to start off with, but now it's becoming the norm. We need to be thinking around the lighting. We need to be thinking about backdrops. We need to be thinking around how we approach or how we look on our virtual screens, and how do we make sure we have decent internet, nice camera clarity, all of these sort of things. There will also be areas you should be considering. Now, with the demand that comes obviously with opportunity, but just to be aware that actually some of you have got opportunity to diversify your clients. Now, you should really, this is an industry standard, not have one client operating more than 17% of your revenue. And so it's actually interesting to think, actually, you could be exposed to risk if you have one client that's giving you more than 17% as a benchmark tool around it all. So we do need to be thinking around how do we actually start recognizing that we've got this opportunity to expand accounts or create new accounts with this great demand, but let's pick the right ones for our organization and build a longer term relationship. So account plans and account planning need to be thought of with regards to that. Now, when it comes to supply lines and delays and everything else, instead of doing it in the past, do it in the future. Preempt the problems. Share this information with your clients. Tell them and let them know ahead in advance so that they can plan accordingly rather than having it in a situation where it all becomes crisis management. And of course, what we want to be doing when it comes to wheat and the chaff piece is that the old school adage of ABC, always be closing, some of you might know already, but it's changed. It's now always be qualifying. And we need to be bringing in systems to qualify the right clients that you could satisfy, that the right fit for you as an organization. So we would always say that you need to qualify, qualify, qualify the entire time. And really the whole challenge with relationship management and relationship selling is that now we're finding that more and more people that have relied on the black book and relied on those great relationships, one, are struggling to find new relationships because there's just no opportunity to do so. And the second thing is that actually they are struggling to get their sales closed out because they've just relied on just having that brilliant personality. Now, what we're finding in our organization with a number of our clients right now is that they need to follow a process. They need to work out how to effectively engage in a virtual environment to be able to make up for that shortfall. I often align this to people that might have learned to ski on a dry ski slope as opposed to on actual snow. Actual snow is very giving, and you can get away with some of the mistakes, as Tim will attest to because he's broken a leg or two in his skiing exploits. But the key thing here is that actually when it comes to the dry bristles of a dry ski slope, it's not as forgiving. That's in effect the same as relationship selling is on soft snow. It allows you to make some mistakes. Whereas selling right now has to be a lot more on point and a lot more sharper in your presentations around what your client needs are, and it's not so forgiving. So that means there's a need for sharpness in a way that you execute and you engage with your clients. And of course, just thinking about this, you need to master the digital universe. And it still amazes me that when I look at some of your LinkedIn presence and what you're doing on LinkedIn to attain and show and give value to people still needs to be brought up into the 21st century. And there's some real need now to think about not just LinkedIn, but other digital platforms that can allow you to network effectively, and that whole thinking around what you can do really from the get-go. So those are the kind of key things that you could be thinking of. And what we've done is we've talked to the SBA and they've asked us to put together a workshop. to help with all of these particular factors. And I've got a colleague of mine, in fact, I've asked 2 of my colleagues to come along and share this information on a 2-hour workshop around this. And one of those, I think, is being able to join us now. Jason, do you want to just talk about what you can expect here?
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Stuart, and hi, everyone. So we're going to be looking at what's in your virtual selling toolkit. We're going to cover 8 areas to that, and it can be anything from, we're going to look at things like, how do I manage my environment, my technology? How do I humanize it? So to Stuart's point, if we're not able to do the physical handshake, but how do we build and establish relationships virtually without that physical handshake? And how do we make it interactive? So we're going to have a bit of a virtual toolkit with 8 things to consider. We're also going to look at how do I qualify prospects online? Again, if you're used to going to events, look at prospects, that world has been taken away from us. But it's really key that we still do some activity to keep that funnel, that top of the funnel activity, and how do we qualify that? And then we're going to look at, well, actually, what are some marginal gains to communicating effectively, looking at, well, whether it be the words, body language, or tone of voice. And that's really important in the traditional face-to-face world, but in the virtual world, that is becoming the norm now. So we're going to be looking at lots of different things that hopefully you can take away instantly and implement in your day-to-day business activities.
Thanks, Jason. Well, look, if you're interested, what we're going to be doing is this event's going to take place on the 19th of February, so just around the corner, because I've heard urgency is a kind of key factor around that one, where we're going to go into a lot more detail headed up by Jason and Craig from the SBR consulting team. Thanks, Tim. Thanks, SPA, for allowing us the opportunity to share this with you. I think there's a poll come up now for you to have a think if it is of interest to you. And I understand it's all part of the SPA membership, Tim. Is that correct?
That is right, Stuart. Thank you very much indeed. A couple of things, Stuart. I take offense. I've never broken a leg. I've dislocated my shoulder several times, but never broken my leg.
Sorry, Tim.
But also, I want to get this written on my LinkedIn profile. I, too, want to become master of the digital universe. That sounds fantastic. So thank you very much, Stuart. Just like to reiterate, this is going to be a fantastic training session. There are a lot of old dogs like myself that need to get new spots, or whatever the expression is. I will be in attendance, and so will my team. So thank you very much, Stuart, and your team at SBR, and we look forward to seeing you on February the 19th.
Cheers,
Stuart.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks. Well, we're getting quite close to the end of conference now. You'll be glad to hear. I did want to thank a few people. I'd like to thank you all, firstly, for attending, and special thanks to our conference sponsors, of course, to Segwerk and Metzer Group, and also our presenters today. Great to see so many first-time conference goers as well, and those of you who've dropped in to see us on a try-before-you-buy membership basis. You're very welcome, and we look forward to seeing you next time as members. That would be wonderful. So we've got one final poll here, which I think will be popping up on screen. Again, this will be anonymous. We won't know who you are, but it would just be good to get a sense of, would you attend another SPA online conference webinar? Yes or no, quite simple. I better put yes. I think I might be expected. And one final slide before we play out to our final spotlight. Just a reminder of those dates. We've come up with a lot of good training and events for you. There they are, 19th of February, the virtual selling workshop that we've just spoken about. Quick fire 2-hour session. Get all your salespeople, sales managers, sales directors, and perhaps yourselves may like to attend that. And 15th, 16th, 17th, that suite of SPA BRCGS training courses. And the 26th of April, you'll be glad to hear we're reconvening for our 3rd online conference. So thank you very much for attending, everybody. But please stay online and watch our final spotlight, please, from JB Machineries. See you next time. Thank you, everybody. That finishes proceedings for today. So see you next time. See you on the 26th of April.